Hello and welcome to the Powerful African Women, the POW podcast.
The podcast will empower the power in you.
I'm Aissatou.
And I'm Sarah.
And today we're actually going to finish the discussion on women's role in African societies, gender equality and feminism.
Yes, a topic chosen by our guest, Fatou and Gbemisola.
We talked about the definition of feminism and start talking about the African issues with it in part 1.
Now we are examining a little deeper what could have influenced those issues.
And provide our suggestions to fight gender equality. So stay tuned
and listen.
Welcome back to the Powerful African Women. This is the part 2 of our talk on women's role in African societies, gender equality and feminism. So in part 1, we've presented our guest, that is Fatou.
Yes, hi, welcome back.
And Gbemisola.
Hey guys.
So Sarah and I, we kind of asked them a question and also gave our opinion on the topic. So first we started by introducing the topic. What were their motivation to want to talk about that? And then we spent quite some time defining what is feminism, because everyone has a different kind of concept. And we quickly start talking about the issues. So maybe what forged this kind of disequality in the African culture. So what is kind of the issue? We started talking about it and we stopped at such a huge moment, a really energetic moment, where we were starting to talk about religion and education. I think Gbemisola was the one talking, so she actually raised some very interesting issues, that is the role of religion and the role of education. And we're going to talk about it now. So, Gbemisola, you were about to talk to us about what do you think the weight of religion and education was?
Yeah, my point was just that I think from what I've general reading, again, this is not in-depth research on this, but just general reading is seeing that generally, Christian women were supposed to be proper and they covered themselves up, right? And they didn't go into the farmland and doing all of that stuff, at least middle-class Christian women. And so I'm just wondering what religion had to do, what part religion played in affecting women's role in society, and also education. Like, when Western education came in, I'm assuming it was mostly men that had access to that kind of education, or at least higher level education, and that might have kind of put women in the back burner a little bit, so social wise.
Speaking of religion, I'm a Muslim, and this is actually interesting because I'm a Muslim and Gbemisola is a Christian, so I think we can be bringing different perspectives. But I think for in Islam, I think the fundamental problem is that, or at least the problem with how Muslims use religion to justify injustices against women, is that everything, like, religion was completely interpreted by men. Okay, institution, all the religious institutions are driven by men. So obviously everything will be defined from their own perspectives without women's voices. And so I think that's why I was watching a TED talk recently. I forgot the title, but basically that Muslim girl was talking about how Islam made her a feminist, and she was talking about how it's important for a woman, at least Muslim woman, to sit at the table, to basically participate in the religious discourse of gender equality. Because I think as Muslim woman, I'm a Muslim woman, and I'm not really afraid to speak up against some things that I'm against, that people use Islam to justify. And a specific example that I can give is, for example, polygamy. Like, I am personally I'm not okay with polygamy. And I remember one day I was talking about it, and then someone was like, oh, if you say this, you're gonna get so much backlash from people, and you're not gonna be seen as a good Muslim. I'm like, first of all, I don't say things to please people. I do my research and I use my reason, because yes, God gave me the Quran, but also God gave me my reason in order to reason. Get it? Ha?
Yes.
Anyways.
No, you're completely right, and I agree. And I agree completely.
And so, yeah, so I'm not saying that everybody should be against polygamy, but you shouldn't just accept things just because people tell you to accept it. You should use your own reason to
Yes.
to make sense of it. And most of these things are very contextual. And men, when they interpret the Quran or something, they pick and choose the stuff that fit their narrative, you know, and they forget about the context.
Exactly.
And
You
like
said
that.
a good point. It's like they forget about the context, because there's also like, you know, like historical context. And you said a good thing about men commenting completely or interpreting the Quran without like really taking in consideration women's view of it, right? Because if you consider like, I'm not gonna get into it too much, you know, because that could be a different, you know, topic. But if you consider like Islam itself, it could be a very feminist in you know, a very feminist religion. But the way it was interpreted was not always in our favor. That's one thing. And then also, like you said, the fact that like just the men only were the main people taking decisions while interpreting the Quran, or like all the big, you know, I don't know, like all the big roles in that religion are only made by men. I don't know, like I'm sure you guys, especially in Senegal, like there's this big thing happening right now about that woman who was supposed to be like an Islamic leader, and everybody was against her because she was a woman. Why? Literally the only reason is because she's a woman, or at least the main reason is because she's a woman, right? So there's just that big like gap in just where do women really fit in higher positions, you know, like in the religious context.
You know what I think is that I totally agree, because in every religion, everything we like, even in the Christian religion or in the Muslim religion, like everything was made and just interpreted and built by men, and that's the issue. So I kind of feel that we have to ask a question like, is the goal of actually gender inequality that is happening like in our societies is just a way, an instrumentalization by male to kind of enhance their superiority and keep their leading role, because that's what they're doing by choosing what they want to keep from the religion. In every context, it's kind of as if the men are just like kind of using those tools to enhance their role and keep their position safe.
Definitely,
you know what
definitely.
I mean?
I'm gonna tell you a story. One day I was talking to a guy who basically attacked me for being too feminist. He said, I mean, you know, in Senegal, I mean, honestly, like, if they see you as a feminist, you're dead. Anyways, he attacked me, and I was like, okay, like, calm down, like, what's your problem with, because all I said was that women should have the right to work. That's all I said. And he said I was too feminist. I was like, okay, what's the problem? And I was ready to hear him out, and he just jumped right in. He was like, okay, tradition, religion. That's like the golden argument for Senegalese men, first of all. And then I was like, okay, religion and tradition, explain yourself. And then to prove himself right, he sent me a verse from the Quran that said, woman, comma, stay at home, exclamation point. He was like, see, the Quran says that woman should stay at home. And then I was like, first of all, you're taking it out of context, as we said. You know, maybe at that moment, at that time, when God was sending that verse, there was a lot of violence in the society, and God wanted women to stay at home for them to be safe. You don't know. I mean, I don't know the context either. Maybe I should do more research, but he doesn't know either. I was like, you can't just come give me this verse and tell me to stay at home. I'm not gonna. First of all, like, well, who are you? And anyways, and then I was watching this video of by three Muslim women, and they were talking about there are so many other verses in the Quran that hint at the possibility for women to work. For example, there is this verse that says the money that a woman makes is her own money. And if the Quran says that means, where is the woman getting the money? Obviously she's working. It's not like she's just sitting at home and the money is falling from the sky, you know? So that verse hints at the possibility for women to work. But no, they will overlook that verse and go to the verse that says women stay at home.
And it's the same thing with the verse about marrying multiple wives. They don't really look at the context.
If you can, they forget about that part.
And that's what it's like everything is with the context, but they forget about that because that fits their own, you know, well-being and their own happiness.
Narratives. Well, exactly.
Yeah. And what I really hate is that they've kind of built societies around that. Like, if you look, okay, let's talk about sexuality. if you look at what they're expecting from women, so the virginity thing, you know, like they're like, a woman should be a virgin. Yes, that's what religion says. So we were all like kind of raised that way, you know, like that is the really important thing you need to focus. But I have 3 brothers, girl, like they never had the pressure I had about this issue, you know what I mean? So how can they expect, like, even if the religion is saying like everyone should be a virgin before marriage and all of that, because of it was a context and all of that, it's I get that, but I don't understand why you have to put all the weight on the girl. Like, all the weight is on girl for virginity, but then the guy, we don't expect anything from them. They're not raised around this topic and all of that. So it's just such an instrumentalization of religion to please and make it easier for guys and just make us like kind of bear all the weight.
But I agree, and I think that we have to be careful whenever we're interpreting religious texts, because context is everything, and it's very dangerous when people say, no, this is exactly how it is. They're very like fundamental about it, and you don't take context. And Fatou gave an example from the Quran, so I also have an example from a Christian point of view, right? Because there's a Bible verse in Ephesians, the book of Ephesians, chapter 5, and if you go to like verse 22, you always hear this verse being preached at either at church or I haven't heard it so much at church in the US, but on YouTube videos or in women's groups about wives, submit to your husbands as you submit to the Lord. For a husband has authority over his wife, just as Christ has authority over the church. And Christ is himself the savior of the church. And so, wives must submit completely to their husbands, just as the church submits itself to Christ. And you hear that verse all the time, wives submit to your husband, wives submit to your husband. I remember I was scrolling through Facebook a while back, and this Nigerian guy posted a video of a woman telling other women, wives, you're okay, since Fatou said I should use my Nigerian accent, here it is. Wives, since you are supposed to submit to your husbands, that's just how it's supposed to be. And you ask why? Because the Bible says that it is so. Like, there's no room for thinking and thinking logically and just asking myself, okay, but why though? It's just saying, oh, women, you're not supposed to, she literally said, women, you're not supposed to be the head. You're not supposed to be the one at the top. The man is the one who makes the decisions, but you can influence him. And I kept thinking to myself that I need you to tell me, like, don't just tell me because the Bible said so. And then I went to the Bible and I realized that there's actually a verse before the one I just read to you. It says, submit yourselves to one another because of your reverence for Christ. And then it goes on to break down how each person should submit to each other. So then it says, wives, submit to your husbands. And then it says, husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church. And so why don't we ever talk about the verse that says submit to one another? Why don't we ever talk about the Bible verse that says husbands, love your wives? So we end up teaching women how to be queens, but we don't teach them how to be kings. Girl. You need both.
Yes, that's a real talk. And again, I feel like we can also see that, like, it's all about, like, we teach women to behave, but not men, you know. Like, I'm gonna go back to the sexuality thing because that bothered me, and talk about the men's pulsation. Like, I feel like I was raised, or women are raised to kind of do everything we can to not like walk the beast, you know what I mean? For instance, I had this I know this person, like, I don't know if you heard about this tradition. It's called the breast ironing tradition. It's kind of in West Africa. It consists in about using, like, rubbing women's breasts when they're about to get into puberty. Yes, so you kind of massage their breasts with a hot stone or some hot iron or anything, that when their breast is starting to grow, to avoid them being too big. Why? So that you protect yourself from men wanting to rape you or those kind of stuff. I'm like, this is crazy. Instead of telling our men to stop doing, like, to not, like, rape, we ask our women to kind of mutilate their body so that they won't be threatened by men's pulsions. That is so crazy,
really
you know?
Crazy. Pleasing the men. I think that's true completely, and it's not even mutilating yourself. True.
And the blame is put on
women.
Way
that we do things generally. Sometimes we get into competition with other women. For what reason? Just to please that man. Sometimes we have to go, to so many different extents in terms of buying different products, for our body, blah, 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 all that for the only common goal of pleasing the man. And sometimes that's something, and it's because it's also very psychological, right? And like we were all like conditioned by all those societies where the end goal is you just have to be submissive to your husband, right? So it's just like, where does it stop? Like, where in those future societies women finally are, defined by themselves instead of defined by what type of husband that she have, or like what type of brothers that she have, or like what type of boss that she have, what I mean? So there's just a big progress to make, to be honest. And coming back on that, even you can work as hard as you can, but like in the end, in the eyes of the society, you're gonna always be like, whose wife is she? She's like Muhammad's wife. She's, Marcus' wife or whatever. Like Mamadou's, I was looking for that name. She's Momodu's wife. But she knows.
I get you.
So it's like, we just have a big progress. And that's what, like the African feminism also comes from, or like that's the type of job it has to do, like to stand up for ourselves. And whenever you said about the virginity,
and stop putting the blame on women. Like I've heard so many stories of raping. Like this girl tell people, "Oh, I got raped by this man," and people would say, "What were you wearing? What were you doing? Why were you there?" Instead of saying this man is bad. Like it's just
But let's go back on the sexuality, because that's a big topic that we actually need to really talk about. And whenever you said that, sometimes we like for men, there's not so much pressure into, exploring your sexuality, or like just, I don't know, just explore in general. For women, it's like you're supposed to, like Aissatou stated very clearly, remain pure until that one husband, the night after everything is signed on paper, discovers you, and he shall be your husband until the end of time. Like, why isn't that pressure also put on men in terms of, you should find that one girl that you should also preserve yourself for? Like, where does it come from?
Yeah, and I do have something to add to that, because I think there's a blurry line here.
Yeah.
Because I totally agree that, we're talking about in general how the pressure is on the women, religion, the context is from the man's point of view, everything is catering to the man. And I agree with you, like actually Fatou and I, we used to talk a lot about this.
Yeah, a lot.
Fatou and I used to disagree, because we would talk about to what extent should women be held accountable for the kind of things that are done to them, especially when it comes to things like rape. And I completely agree, because when you hear about rape, people do say, well, what was she wearing? Or why was she drunk? And it's like, no. You literally just raped someone. But,
Yeah. And also, I remember when Bemi and I were having this conversation in college, and basically she said the same thing I remember very well. And I was telling her that she's right, yes. But for me, it was, I don't, because Bemi was saying that on social media, in public, we should always raise these points. I was like, yes, Bemi, you're right. We should always raise these points. But sometimes, most of the time, we should raise these points with women, I'm not very comfortable talking about this on the podcast because everybody would be listening. But what I was telling Bemi was like, if I have a son and a daughter, and I'm, my twins, I'm just kidding. And I'm raising them, I I will incentivize my daughter, to know, to be aware, to recognize her weaknesses, because as women, we're just vulnerable and we're weaker than men, to recognize her weaknesses and to be careful and in all situations, to be aware of her surroundings. She cannot just go out at 3 a.m. and be like, I shouldn't be raped because I'm a woman, I'm a human being. No, we don't live in a perfect society, as Gbemi said. But at the same time, I told Gbemi that I would never say those kinds of things in front of my son. I will tell my son to even if he sees a naked woman, if he cannot help her out, he shouldn't. He should just look away and move on with his life. He should respect women in all situations, And I think it's because the moment we start saying, "Woman, oh, what were you wearing?" things like that,
you're already blaming
then men
the
will
woman
internalize those things and think exactly. Men will internalize it and think it's okay to take advantage of a woman they think is dressed inappropriately. I'm gonna give an example. I don't know if I said to you, you knew about this, but I told Gbemi, there was basically this philosophy professor in Senegal. Do you know Songe? Professor Songe? I'm gonna say it.
No,
anyways,
I don't.
He said on national TV that women who are raped should be put into jail because I'm not done, because with their curves in their tight jeans, they provoke. I swear to God, he said it on national TV. And that's not the end of the story, People defend him. People were like, oh yeah, he's right. And I was like, what the heck? And then people said, you know why he's right? His intention was good. He had good intentions. He just wanted to incentivize women, to advise them. I'm like, this is not advising women,
No,
First of all,
this is attacking women and defending the men. That's the issue.
This is blaming women, first of all. And second of all, the biggest problem is that a 4-year-old boy who hears that on TV will grow up thinking that he has the right to take advantage of a woman he thinks is dressed inappropriately. And that's how we raise a generation of men who do not respect women. And that's how we perpetuate rape culture. Thank you very much.
Yes, girl. Yes, Fatou.
She just finished. I think at this point, let's just wrap it up and then Fatou finish that conversation.
Mic drop.
Next, we're going to talk about tackling the gender issue inequality in the African context. So what do you guys think that men should do, in order to help us fight the fight? So should men be feminists? And what kind of role do you think that should have in the African society to help us move forward and be better versions of ourselves?
Well, I definitely think that men have a role in the fight for women's rights, because if half of the population does not get involved in this fight, it cannot move forward. Let's be honest,
Yes.
They definitely have a role. And honestly, to me, my dad is my biggest example of a women's rights advocate, honestly. So
yeah, me too.
How can you give us an example where what did your dad concretely do?
Just the fact that he was very supportive to my mom working, he never complained about my mom working, even if she used to work sometimes on weekends, and also one specific thing that he did that I really, really admired was how when my female cousin was having some issues with her husband, and she's a stay-at-home mom, okay? And then her husband was just not respecting her anymore. But they were having some issues, And then my dad, it wasn't my cousin's mom who stepped up for her. It wasn't my mom. It was my dad who went all the way to my cousin's house, and he told her husband, listen, she's your wife. You have to respect her. Even if you're having issues, that's okay. Everybody goes through these problems. But you have to give her the respect that she deserves. Don't think just because she's in your house that she's dependent on you, that she doesn't have anywhere else to go. If you don't want her anymore, we'll take her back gladly. And he told my cousin, you know what? And he told my cousin, you know what? This is your choice. You can continue to stay at home and be with your wife, be with your husband, or you can go. If you want to work, let us know. We'll find an opportunity for you. But don't let anyone step on your toes. No. And afterwards, my cousin, it wasn't even my dad who told me this. I went home and my cousin told me, and you could see my cousin was so empowered. She was telling me, she was like, oh my goodness, your dad came here, and now my husband has to respect me. And she felt really empowered. I was really inspired by that.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Your dad is definitely this kind of good example of what men should do for feminism.
In the community that I grew up in, it was kind of mixed, There were some men who were really advocate of women working, being independent, bringing money at home, and not fully depending on the men. But there were also other cases of men just wanting the, wife to just sit at home, take care of the kids, and being completely limited. So
I'm actually thinking, like, because of what just Fatou said, that reminds me of a personal thing that happened to me when I was young. I was like, I don't know, 10 years old. And so I wanted, like, all my cousins, even the cousins that were younger than me by like 5 years, which was a lot at that age, my brothers were going to play football, right, at one of the like football fields in the neighborhood. And I wanted to go, but my grandfather was like, oh no, don't go, you're a girl, you're not going there. And I was so sad. And then my dad, who I didn't know at that time was kind of a feminist kind of guy, just told me, no, don't worry, he's just old, he doesn't get that today we have to be equal, but don't be sad. That he
cute.
Like, I was really like that crying,
so
and my dad was like, it's okay, he's just too old, he doesn't understand that. And that was the time I was like, today I can say, yes, my dad is kind of this kind of man, like this kind of model of feminist guy, just because he didn't judge my grandfather. He just said, like, he's old, like he's coming from another system that he doesn't understand, but it's not normal that as a girl you cannot go just play with the guys. So yeah. I just have another question, girls, about like, because all four of us are part of the diaspora. We're not like, we're not there. And we're talking about how should women who live back home should live. So like, don't you feel that as the diaspora, we're kind of having a bit of the Western vision of feminism, and we're kind of like, what should be our role? Like, should we just tell people, oh, you shouldn't let your husband do that, you shouldn't do that? Or what should we do as the diaspora, the kind of link?
That's actually a very good question.
I definitely do not agree. I think that I'm a firm believer in making sure that the diaspora doesn't put themselves on a pedestal amongst people that are living in Africa, because then you end up having that colonial mindset without even knowing that you have it. So
that's the risk.
My thing that I always do is just to listen. Before I speak, I want to know, what do you believe? Why do you believe what you believe, right? So that you understand where they're coming from, because they look oppressed to you doesn't mean they are oppressed. I mean, assuming it's not obvious oppression, right? Like stay at home, don't go to school kind of situation. But making sure you're sitting down and understanding them, I think that's important for the diaspora before we start giving them advice, because it might be unwarranted advice that they don't even want.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Gbemi. And also I think it's very dangerous to go back and have this one idea, as I was talking about earlier, how in Western feminism they have this one idea of how a liberated woman should look like or something, and we shouldn't go back home and expect, like, I go back home and some friends tell me, oh, I just want to have I don't know, I just want to have a BA and I'm fine with that, and I shouldn't tell them, oh, why do you want to settle? You know, people have different, like, we shouldn't assume that all women want the same. We all don't want to do a PhD. We all don't want to have a master. Some women want to stay. I have a really good friend of mine. She's very smart. She got her master's degree and she's working now. And she personally tell me, you know what, Fakinet, the day when I get married, and my husband has a good job and he can support the family, I'm gonna choose to stay at home and cook and clean. And she's okay with that, and I respect that, you know. So I shouldn't.
We need to stop judging.
Yeah, exactly. We need to stop judging. We need to take time to understand the context, and that's like feminism is always contextual. Just understand the context first before judging.
I feel like that's the main thing we've learned from this podcast. Feminism, it's so much about context and people
and choice.
It's all of the above.
I was just gonna say that I actually am like Fatou's friend. I think that I've been thinking about it a lot, right? Like, I actually think I would want to stay at home for a few years after I have my child, maybe 4 or 5, and dedicate my time to them. And I also tend to believe that men do have more masculine energy, has more of a dominance trait to it, whereas feminine energy has more of a submissive trait to it. And so I'm generally okay with the man taking more of the lead in some situations, as long as he's still respecting me. And I sometimes feel uncomfortable saying that in public, because I feel that women will be like, certain women, at least here, might say, why would you ever want to do that? Why would you ever let the man lead you in certain situations? You know? So just to back up what you were saying about choice.
Yeah, I actually I agree about the ending of what you said, but I feel like when you said there is a masculine dominance and a feminine feminine energy that is more submissive, I actually disagree, because the masculine energy you're talking about, I don't feel like it's strictly the man. You know, like masculine energy isn't into a man. You know, like some girls are actually have what you are calling the masculine energy and are in the dominant side. I am that kind of girl, you know, and I'm not a guy. You have some guys that are more that has more feminism energy, while you have some girls that have more like the masculine kind of dominance thing. So I don't think it's a girl or guy man thing. Okay, in society generally the male has the masculinity energy, or I don't know how you call it.
Masculine energy?
Yeah, masculine energy, but I know that it's such a difference depending on the person. So the household role as you define them, and I get that you want to be the one staying at home, but some guy actually could have your energy, and some girls could have your husband energy. And it shouldn't be defined because of your sex, but more because of the energy you're bringing to the house.
And I definitely understand where you're coming from, and it's actually something I've thought a lot about and read a lot, like actually quite a lot of articles, and that's why I forwarded that thing to Fatou. And I think my response to that is, again, this comes down to choice. You live your life how you want to live your life, but I do think that we shouldn't make the exception the rule. And so generally, I think this also has a biological basis to it, right? In that women are the ones that have children. Women are the ones that release oxytocin as they're taking care of their children. They're the ones that have to stay with the kid. And so because you have to have this moment throughout pregnancy and while you're giving birth, in which you're extremely vulnerable, you really need your man to step up for you. You need your man at that time to be a provider, not necessarily financially, but taking care of you, taking the lead, not, waiting on you to make decisions. And so I think that the one thing I don't like about feminism is that it says that, I don't want to have to become like a man to be happy. I can be a woman in my feminine energy and be okay. We complement each other. And so my thing is that there might be some biological basis to it, especially as the person who has to have the child, who has to breastfeed, who has to stay at home, who has to be pregnant. You're going to be vulnerable. I think that the exception should not define the rule just because some women are like this or some men are like this.
There is something where I don't agree with you, is that you think those kind of women are exception. They're not. And what I would add to ask is that it's not because during the moment of pregnancy, it's sure that you have some physical thing that makes you like kind of describe whatever, like everything you were saying. It doesn't mean that once you've like got to a baby and all of that, you have to stick to that position of like the man having to take care of you. I so disagree on that. People are so different. Everyone is so different on those kind of stuff. And it's not because I'm a woman that I'm thinking that way or stuff like that. I agree with the biological thing, and giving birth is such a huge thing. I do agree with. At that moment, with what you say, I agree. But for the rest, I so disagree. And I feel that I hate generalization about gender because it depends on the person so much that I so disagree with what you just said. Let's just like agree to disagree.
Thank you, Aissatou, for all these disagreements. We loved it. And thank you, Gbemisola, for giving your opinion, because that's all this power talk is about, okay? So let me ask you guys this question. So what do you guys think we should focus more in terms of like topics and an area of development?
Yeah, I think honestly, discussion is very important, having dialogue, especially with men, because first of all, I don't think we should expect everybody to be on the same page, and we shouldn't expect men to just know about the issues that we face, because they're not in our shoes. First of all, like even I knew 4 years ago, so I don't think we should expect everybody to know, and so we should take the time to explain, to break it down to people who are interested. Obviously, there are those people, like the moment you raise these issues of women's rights, you put put them off. They won't listen to you, you know? And it's hard to talk to those people. But to those people who interested, they want to know more. Like, we should take the time, not judge them or not yell at them, not be aggressive about them, you know, just talk gently, you know, about these issues. I think that's very, very, very important.
Yes. Gbemisola?
I definitely agree with that. I mean, there's nothing else to add. It's exactly what she said.
Agreed. And Sarah, do you have something you want to add about?
Yeah, I think definitely education, you know, and in our societies. And whenever I say education, it's not only in school where, like, you have to, you know, like, in the specific curriculum, you know, includes topics about feminism. It's also at home. Like, men, our fathers, I think, again, depending on where you come from, sometimes fathers are very implicated into that topic, and sometimes important. They're not, because I feel like in my household, it was not that clear, and I wish it was more clear. So definitely, you know, around you and like around your family, just make sure that that topic is raised and that topic is talked about, right? Yeah.
I totally agree. I will just add one point, that is that we need to be able to allow for the debate. That's an issue with our African societies, is that whenever you want to say something, people say no, you don't talk. This, like, either you cannot say that in religion, or this is our tradition. You cannot say that. Like, allow people to talk, allow for the debate, and stop judging, like insulting people. Oh no, you're a feminist because you say that. Just listen and allow for the debate. Wow.
That was a good discussion.
Wow. That was such a good discussion.
Yes,
I'm so glad we did it.
Woo!
Thank you, guys.
Yes. And actually, I thank you to our listener for listening to this episode. Thanks to our guests. So thank you, Fatou, for your time, for your insights, your opinion. And thank you, Gbemisola, also. We really love having both of you. And we hope our listeners are really gonna talk about it, react. We want you to react, people.
Yes.
Like, if you don't agree, tell us you don't agree.
Bring that debate out so that you guys can talk about it and talk with, not only among yourself, share with other people to make it.
And if you really have a lot to say, just come. Be our next guest. We would be glad to have you, you know.
Queens. So. We all queens.
We're all queens.
So, because this is our last episode of the year, so we kind of wanted to do this kind of wrap up of the year, or kind of resolution. So, I'm gonna ask this question. Is there something like you want to change, or is there something that happened this year that you really learned about yourself that you want to share? And what is your kind of jam? What are you gonna do in 2020 in this matter? So, Sarah, I'm gonna ask you first. What is your kind of resolution year?
Okay, first of all, even before going to resolution, I just want to be thankful first, right? I'm thankful for my friends. I'm thankful to have met you guys, first of all. But I'm really thankful for your, for my friends, for my family. 2019 has been a very interesting year, and I'm just thankful for God to have, made me go through it so that I can discover myself more. 2020 resolution, I think it's to really focus more on myself, finding myself as a person, especially starting in a new career, and being unapologetically myself. That's all I can say.
That's
yes, girl.
And definitely focus more on also my connection with God and my family. So yeah, those are the stuff I'll be working on. And happy New Year to everyone.
My New Year's resolution, I think, is just to be authentically myself, be my authentic self, which resonates with what Sohan said about be unapologetically myself. So that is my New Year's resolution.
So for me, my resolution is kind of lame, but I think this year I really want to work on building my self-confidence, like believing in myself again, because being in this program has been really, really tough. Bimi knows how much I struggled, especially last year, and it took a while for me to believe that I could do it. And sometimes I still doubt myself, to be honest. And I'm still like, maybe this is not for me, I should quit. So I think I just need to work more on being positive and believe in my capability.
Okay, I think that's mine now. So I would say I really learned something in 2019. I did something I really wanted to do, was travel alone. So going to a place, so I went to Indonesia by myself. I had a friend there, but I mean, I traveled alone for a while. And it was part of a process, I mean, right now, which is kind of learning to know who I am, you know, like, you know, this thing, like learning to be the unapologetic you. I actually need to learn who is the me first, and that's what I'm doing right now. So it's kind of a process, you know, like doing stuff you've never done to learn stuff about yourself. And I really want to keep doing that in 2020 and do like one other big challenge, you know, like doing something I'm kind of afraid of and doing. And because you can learn so much about you and what you want and who you are by doing those kind of stuff, like pushing your boundaries. So
I agree.
I want to keep doing that and learning to a little more about who I am and what I want to do.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Sounds
that's
well.
it.
Deep stuff, deep stuff.
Yes. Thank you. That's the end.
Thank you, Fatou and Sarah, for
listening.
having us. This was so much fun.
Thank you.
Thank you
guys are
so
awesome.
much.
So thank you for listening. Follow us on our social media. We're on Facebook, on Instagram. You just have to type Powerful African Women on your phone, on your computer.
Yes, just do it now, darlings. Powerful African Woman. And for Twitter, it's Power Woman in one word.
And you have to give us your opinion. We really want to get your opinion. Also your feedbacks, your suggestions, your comments, like whatever.
Yes, and also you can reach out to us through email at powerfulafricanwoman at gmail.com. Give us your opinion, ask us questions, send us some love. We'll take anything and everything. Thank you, guys.
And don't forget to bring out the power in you.